How's it going, everybody? I'm Steve, and welcome back to my channel. So, some important movies are having their 50th anniversary this year, and this year's kind of special because 1973 is when I was born, so I'm going to be 50 later on this year. So, I've kind of grown with some of these movies, and some of these movies I've actually not seen until actually last year, 2022. So, I've added basically I have 8 movies here in my collection. I know I've looked through through the list of like a lot of movies from 1973, and they're like over 200 movies or so, and then so I just picked 8 that I actually have in my collection so I can show them ones I've actually seen. I think pretty much the ones I saw on the list, other movies I had not seen before. So I have these 8 movies kind of loosely ranked, going from kind of least favorite to favorite. Obviously, I like all these movies. That's why I have them in my collection. But just the ones some of the ones I haven't seen a lot, and based, I wanted to end on a strong note, just on a positive note. So I just kind of went from, like least to favorite, but none of these are bad movies at all. At number 8, this first movie was directed by Terrence Malick. It's starring Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek, and the movie is Badlands. This movie's kind of dark, I think by today's standards, it's not nearly as bad as it probably was back then, 50 years ago, but this one I watched a couple times. I think I watched it once, the regular movie, and then I think I watched it with commentary. So it's kind of wacky, but at the end, it's kind of strange how it ends. But it has some dark moments in it for sure. And Martin Sheen's character kind of takes pleasure in doing the things he does in the movie. So, but that's number 8. At number 7, this one was directed by Brian De Palma. It's starring Margot Kidder, Jennifer Salt, Charles Durning, has Bill Finley. If you ever saw Phantom of the Paradise, another movie from Brian De Palma. But this one, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it says it was released 1972 because it was shown in like an LA film festival. But the actual release date was in 1973. But the movie is Sisters. On the back of this, it says 1973. So that's the official year that it got released in theaters. But this is kind of like an early kind of horror movie. It's kind of bizarre in some ways that you'd have to see what it's based on to kind of understand it. But this is Brian De Palma kind of doing a little bit of horror back in the day. There's a nice shot of the Twin Towers in New York because this is I think it was filmed in 1972. But the towers, I think they didn't open until like 1973. Technically, I think one building was one of the towers was open first. I think it was like the North Tower, and then the other one was the South Tower was basically completed like 6 months later. But so it's kind of nice to see that in the New York skyline. But Margot Kidder, obviously, she was in the Superman movies, and she's passed away now. But this one was kind of interesting. It's not like extreme horror, but it has kind of some shocking scenes in it. At number 6, this one was actually directed by Guy Hamilton. It's a part of a big franchise, but it's the first movie that starred Roger Moore, and I just have the James Bond box set, so that's the only thing I could show you here. But it's Live and Let Die, 1973, obviously. But this movie's I think my favorite part of this movie is really the Paul McCartney theme song to the movie because I think Roger Moore didn't really kind of get into the role well until like the third movie, which is The Spy Who Loved Me. I think it's a really great movie. But there's Roger Moore, he's basically the third James Bond. If George Lazenby did one movie. I think Sean Connery came back and did one movie, Diamonds Are Forever, before this one, and that On Her Majesty's Secret Service was before that with George Lazenby. So I think originally Roger Moore was wanted for James Bond, but he couldn't get out of his TV show The Saint, so he never got an audition at that time. But it started off with Sean Connery, the iconic James Bond character actor there. But there's a kind of a scene there. But it has so this movie has Jane Seymour's in it. It has Yaphet Kotto, I believe, is the kind of the bad guy in the movie, but. This one's not one of my favorites. It's probably like middle of the road as far as Roger Moore's the 7 movies that he did as James Bond. So like I said, it took him like 3 movies to really kind of get into the role. But The Spy Who Loved Me is really my favorite. It's probably my second favorite James Bond movie. So some people don't like Roger Moore all that much. His movies his Bond movies were really more campy compared to the Sean Connery era. But 50 years old, so it's kind of stood the test of time in some ways. But I wouldn't put it in my top 10 favorite James Bond movies though. At number 5, I have one that was written and directed by Michael Crichton. If you know the Jurassic Park, that iconic movie, that was released in 1993, so 20 years after this one. But the movie is Westworld. They had I think they had a movie. The sequel was like Future World. And then they did, the TV show on HBO. They brought it back for that. A lot of people like, the first season of that show for sure. But this one's, starring Yul Brynner. That's him. It has a Richard Benjamin, as James Brolin. Josh Brolin's dad, James Brolin. It has so this movie. When I was a kid, this movie really scared me. If I watch it now, it doesn't have that same effect on me. But I definitely, when I was a kid, I didn't know what was happening. To have a machine go after Richard Benjamin there, so it really scared me back then. But I think it's still a good movie. So check out Westworld. At number 4, this one's directed by Martin Scorsese, or Scorsese, as a lot of people would say. This is starring Robert De Niro. It has Harvey Keitel, but the movie is Mean Streets. I really need to get this on Blu-ray. It's one of the few great movies that I have still on DVD. But I haven't watched this in a while. But I really loved it. Robert De Niro. This is early in his career, so he definitely he did The Godfather 2 after this one with Francis Ford Coppola. But I looked it up, and Robert De Niro's worked with Martin Scorsese 11 times now. He has a new movie coming out later on this year, I think on Apple TV Plus, and I think it's like, I forgot the title necessarily, but he's worked out with them 11 times, so that's quite a partnership with The Irishman being one of the more recent ones that he did with Martin Scorsese, but this one Robert De Niro definitely showed some of the things he was capable of. He won an Oscar the year after this with The Godfather 2. At number 3, I have Enter the Dragon. This is part of the Bruce Lee box set. You can see Enter the Dragon is like the 4th one on here, but so I don't have actually anything to show on this one. It just shows the Blu-rays inside, so there's no pictures in it. But this was directed by Robert Klaus. Starring Bruce Lee, the icon. It has John Saxon. If you've ever seen A Nightmare on Elm Street, he played the dad in that movie. It has Bolo Young, the kung fu artist. It has Jim Kelly, has Bob Wall, another kung fu artist. But love Enter the Dragon, though. I used to have this on DVD by itself, and when Criterion put the box set out and included Enter the Dragon with it, I thought, because before I had like the Bruce Lee box set, and it didn't have Enter the Dragon, I had to buy that separately. So I was excited to get them all on Blu-ray and get them all in one box set. At number 2, I have the horror classic, The Exorcist. This one's directed by William Friedkin. He obviously won an Oscar for the French Connection in 1971. It has Ellen Burstyn. It has Max von Sydow, the great actor. It has Linda Blair. Obviously, she played the character, the main character that gets possessed in the movie. It has a Jason Miller. It has a Lee Cobb. If you've ever seen 12 Angry Men, and On the Waterfront. It's written by William Peter Blatty. He directed The Exorcist 3 and wrote the book Legion. It's an iconic book. But this movie, I love the third act the most in this. That's when it really gets scary. I think in 1973, I think you really had to convince people about possession. It was kind of a new thing that you really had to. They spend a lot of the movie trying to convince people that this really exists until it actually shows itself in that last 30 minutes or so. That's when I really love to watch it. I can watch the whole movie, but it's really, I kind of really pay attention right at the end. When the Linda Blair is fully possessed at that time, and that's when it really gets scary. But it's an iconic movie. Definitely I think it stood the test of time for the most part. But like I said, that third act is definitely the best part of the movie for me. So number 1, like I said, I wanted to end this on a kind of positive note, but this movie is American Graffiti. It's directed by George Lucas. If this movie had been successful, there probably wouldn't be a Star Wars. That just an iconic franchise. Can you imagine if that never happened? That's what this was made by Universal Studios, but and Star Wars was made by Fox, 20th Century Fox. So but if this movie hadn't done well, who knows what would have happened? Francis Ford Coppola really challenged George Lucas to do this. Francis Ford Coppola was George Lucas's mentor, and Lucas had done the movie, the sci-fi movie THX 1138, and that didn't do well at the box office. So Francis Ford Coppola challenged him to do something conventional, and George Lucas loved auto racing, loved cars, that kind of stuff. And if you know George Lucas, he had a major car accident when he was really young, and he says that really shaped his whole life. Really, what made him feel like he was kind of living on borrowed time, sort of. And so he did this. It has a great cast. Ron Howard. Richard Dreyfuss, the guy from Jaws that won an Oscar later on for The Goodbye Girl. So '70s was definitely Richard Dreyfuss. The best part of his career happened all in the '70s. He did some stuff in like the '80s here or there, but as far as his most successful period was definitely in the '70s. And it was also has Harrison Ford's in this. Very young at the time. He wasn't like a leading man at that time. He wasn't like a big star or anything. But he's in this. It also has Cindy Williams. If you saw Laverne and Shirley, she's passed away now, unfortunately. But this movie is so much fun, and has music from the '50s. Just people driving around in cars, and just the story is really interesting. It's really funny, and love American Graffiti. So that's it. Please leave in the comments. Let me know some movies that you like from 1973. Like I said, I went through the list. I wanted to pick all the movies I actually own, because if they're movies I really love, I probably own them already. But give me some suggestions of some movies that you love from 1973. Maybe I need to check those out too. But so I only have 8 movies here. But please put a like on this video if you like this content. If you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. And have a good night. Thank you. Bye.